Hey, it's good to see you. Good to see you. And even though we can't see those of you that are online, we thank you for joining us this morning. But it's great to see all of you. I know that we have some guests that are with us this morning. We've got several guests, and we just want to thank you again for hanging out with us this morning. And it's great to see all of you, even though there's been some inclement weather out there. You didn't let the weather stop you. That's awesome. That's good. We're about to kick off a brand new series called YOLO. Anybody ever heard of the phrase or the word YOLO? Anybody? Okay, see, you've heard of it. And it's an acronym that stands for You Only Live Once. I mean, isn't it funny how in our day and age that we get on social media, we get on Twitter, we get on Facebook, and we've got like all these acronyms, right? Do you remember the one way back, AFK? Anybody remember? What is it? Away from keyboard, yeah. Some of you are just like, what was AFK? I don't remember that one. Yeah, going way back. AFK was away from keyboard, all right? And I know there's kind of one that just kind of started not too long ago, but TBT, anybody know TBT? Throwback Thursday. Why couldn't it be Tuesday, man? You know, why's it got to be Thursday? What's wrong with Tuesday and Wednesday and Monday? I mean, my goodness. But Throwback Thursday, right? Or TMI, anybody? TMI. Too much information, right? So we've got it's funny because we don't even talk to each other anymore. We just kind of throw acronyms at each other, you know, YOLO, TMI, TBT, you know. I mean, it's like we don't even have like words that we're actually speaking. I mean, we don't even talk to each other. It's like we're sitting right there in front of each other and we're texting. Hey, how you doing? I'm fine, you know. But we have like all this technology, but it's so funny how we have all these different acronyms that we use in our world today, and YOLO is one of them. And it's the idea that you only live once. It's actually started becoming popular somewhere around 2011. It started to be thrown around. You only live once, and it's actually kind of a phrase that was, it's a modern phrase or modern terminology for something that was way back, the Romans used to use it called carpe diem, which means seize the day. And so they would say this all the time. They would say this to each other. They would say, seize the day. And YOLO is kind of that same mindset, so to speak, and it talks about you only live once. Now, here's the thing with YOLO, because there's actually two schools of thought, or actually two ideas that go along with it. It's one of the ideas is that it generates an excitement to be brave, to go out there and make a difference with your life and to do something great with your life. So it kind of generates bravery to get out there and take risks, but take calculated risks and actually look it through and look it over and make sure you're not just taking a risk for just taking a risk's sake. There is that side of it that ignites bravery or ignites courage within people. But then there's another side of YOLO that just says, you know, it's just kind of, it's a phrase that's used to justify doing something stupid, doing something embarrassing, doing something that you will regret, doing something that is that you will maybe even resent. And so there's two sides to this thing because honestly, I mean, yeah, we only live once, right? I mean, you only live this life once. You and I aren't going to live this life again. And I kind of think of just the video clip that we just saw, and it's like the guy that's on there riding his BMX bike or riding his bike there, he's on a mountain. If you couldn't see that, he's on a mountain. I mean, this guy is riding on a mountain. You and I, come on, let's just be honest. It would be foolish for us to try that. But now for him, it's something that he's practiced. It's something that he's done over and over. It's something that he makes look so easy that to us, we're just like, oh, I could do that. You know, like we just think, oh, I'll just hop on the bike and I'm just gonna pedal away. And you will probably 10 feet into it just start, you know, you're supposed to be riding your bike, but instead you're rolling with your bike, you know, and you're rolling over your bike and breaking bones and all of those things. Because you and I, we haven't taken the time to learn what does that mean and how does that work and practice it and that sort of thing. So there are those two mindsets where it says, where YOLO says, hey, you only live once, man. Be courageous. Get out there and make a difference with your life. But then there's another side of YOLO that just says, hey, you know what? You only live once. I mean, you might as well just kind of like, throw your life away. You might as well just kind of waste your life away. You might as well just, you only live once. I mean, hey, you might as well just try some stupid stuff. You might as well just do some dumb stuff. Like, again, for you and I, it would be dumb for us to get on a bike and try to ride down a mountain on that bike. But for others, it's something that is courageous simply because it's something that they've done before. It's something that they've done from time to time. And so it's those two mindsets. And really, when you think about it, as we kick this series off, when you think about YOLO, when you think about you only live once, and you think about those two schools of thoughts, or you think about those two ideas, we're really kind of looking at wisdom versus foolishness. Now, I went on to Twitter and went on Facebook, and I wanted to see, because you've probably seen this before. Like I said, you've heard of the acronym before. You've probably seen hashtag YOLO before. And so I went on Twitter and went on Facebook and wanted to see, okay, what do people tweet when they use hashtag YOLO? And here's some of the ones that I found. Here's what some people say living once means to them. I feel like I'm going to puke. But hashtag YOLO, right? You only live once, right? So somebody must have drank too much last night. Vandalizing the seniors' cars is really smart and funny. Hashtag YOLO. Smoke weed every day. Hashtag YOLO. You only live once. Hey, you know what? You might as well just do some stuff. Stop being afraid of what could go wrong and start being positive on what could go right. Hashtag YOLO. Got kicked out of the strip club last night. Hashtag YOLO. Hey, you only live once. Yep, we're an office of adults eating pie for lunch because hashtag YOLO. This guest speaker is saying we need to take more risk. I take risk all the time. Sometimes I use a different flavor coffee creamer. Hashtag YOLO. Take some risks, man. YOLO. Dislocated my kneecap and patella last night because hashtag YOLO. Probably did something stupid. Probably was trying to ride his bike down a mountain. I got a hangover. Hashtag YOLO. Just me and my girl getting messed up. Hashtag YOLO. This is what you only live once means to some people. Enjoy every moment. Hashtag YOLO. This can only end badly. Hashtag YOLO. I mean, this is somebody that just knows I'm getting ready to do something stupid. I'm getting ready to do something foolish. I'm getting ready to do something that I am going to regret. I'm getting ready to do something, but hey, you only live once, right? To others, your life may look like a mess, but to God, He is making His message. Allow God to use your life. Hashtag YOLO. And so I want to ask this question. Because as you've heard this acronym before, and as you've heard people tweet about it, and you've heard people Facebook post about it, and you've heard the terminology, and you've heard what people say about living once, and here's what I believe living once is all about. I mean, I'm just going to waste my life away. I'm just going to make my life whatever I want it to be, and I'm just going to try a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna allow my life to mean something. I'm gonna cause my life. I want my life to make a difference. I want my life to have purpose. You've got these two ideas, so let me ask you this question. Which idea do you lean toward? Which idea of YOLO, which idea of you only live once is the one that you lean toward? Do you lean toward trying new things and being able to make a difference in your life and for your life to matter? Or do you lean forward, or do you lean on the side of, hey, you know what? You only live once. I mean, I might as well try a bunch of drugs. I might as well try a bunch of things that are just going to mess up my life. I might as well just try it. I mean, you only live once. We're going to talk about numbering, or our days being numbered, in just a few moments. And when you think about it, God knows exactly how many days we have on this earth. And God actually knows how many days He desires for us to live out on this earth. But the reality is this, we know this, right? The reality is that every single one of us, we can shorten our days on this earth. I mean, we can shorten our lives on this earth by the things that we do and the things that we allow ourselves to get involved in, and even the people that we hang out with, the things that we eat and we overindulge on, whatever it might be, the things that we eat, the things that we drink, whatever we're doing with our lives, that we could easily shorten shorten our life, shorten those days. And we see people do this all the time. And I'm not just talking about where they may shorten their days by the things that they do and maybe the things that they eat or what they involve in their life. But we also see people shortening the days of their life. They shorten the days that were numbered, that God intended for them to live this full and fulfilled life, that they shorten that by taking their own life. Because they just come to that place where they realize, you know what, life is not worth living. I've tried everything, and it's just pointless, and you know, nobody loves me, nobody wants me around, and everything I touch, I fail at, and I've made one mistake after another, and one mistake after another, and so they just come to that place where they just realize, you know, there's no sense in me living, and they shorten the life that God intended for them to live. And every single one of us, we can do that. We can shorten the life that actually God intends for us to live. And one of the ways that we could do that is just by having that mentality of, hey, you know what? You only live once. I mean, you might as well do it. You only live once. You might as well say it. You only live once. Rather than actually thinking about, listen to me this morning, rather than actually thinking about, what are we saying? What are we doing with our lives? Because that's the difference in the two schools of thought, if you will, that revolve around YOLO. And actually, there's this guy, Moses. Moses was the guy that, going way back a couple thousand years, Moses was the guy that God used to deliver his people out of Egypt. They were in slavery, they were in bondage, and here's this guy Moses, and Moses has made many mistakes in his life, and God says, Moses, I want to use you. And Moses is like, God, are you sure? I can't even talk. I mean, I'm not good with words, and God, I've made so many mistakes. I've killed people, and I've committed murder. I mean, I've done all these evil things, and God tells Moses, yep, I want to use you. And so God uses Moses. He delivers the children of Israel, delivers the Jews out of Egypt, and then Moses just leads them into the promised land. And Moses it's probably more toward the end of his life that maybe he wrote this. And actually we pick it up in Psalms that it was passed down over the years. But we pick it up in Psalms. But here's what Moses had to say about life. And here's what Moses had to say about living once and this life that we live. And again, looking at those two trains of thought as we talked about, just kind of keep those in perspective. And again, what is your idea of only living once? What's my idea of only living once? But here's what Moses said, Psalm 90, verse 12, teach us, God. He's talking to God. He says, God, this is my prayer. Teach us to number each of our days so that we may grow in wisdom. Now notice what Moses is saying, because actually one of the things that Moses is saying here is that he's saying, God, you know, teach us to number our days from the standpoint of, God, teach us to itemize and to calculate our days. God, help us to prepare our days. Help us to set our days. Help us to allot our days. This is what this word means, this word number. Teach us to number our days. Teach us to itemize and calculate. In other words, Moses was saying, God, help us to actually look at our day and plan it and not just say, well, I'm just going to say anything because, hey, I can say anything. Because the reality is you can and I can, right? I mean, nobody's going to stop us from saying what we want to say unless they, you know, arrest us and they put a muzzle on us or whatever. But I mean, for the most part, we could say whatever we want to say. I mean, we could do whatever it is that we want to do. And Moses is saying, God, help us to, before we jump into something, before we jump into saying something, before we just treat people the way that we think we want to treat. Help us, God, to take a back seat first and to look at our day and to look at each and every day and to look at our life and to see if what we want to do with our lives is really the outcome, that the outcome of what we want to do with our lives is the outcome that we want. That the end result of the way that we treat people around us is the end result that we want. That the way that we live and the longevity of our life, that the success that we want to have, will this accomplish? Will the way that I live my life, will the way that I use my words, will the way that I do things, with what I allow to influence into my life, with what I allow, what I introduce into my life, those things that I allow to influence into and that I introduce into my life, God, help me to look and see if it's going to accomplish the desired and end result that I want. See, I know this about you, just like I know it about myself, is that you want to succeed. And I want to succeed. I know this about us is that we want to live a long life, every single one of us. And yeah, there are times that sure, we think about that and maybe the thought has just briefly crossed your mind, but it's not like you've made some real attempts. And maybe the thought has crossed your mind a time or two where you were just like, man, I just want to end it. I just want to get rid of, I just want my life to be over. Just because the world is pressing in or just life is throwing its curveballs and handing over lemons and all this stuff. But here's what I know is for the most part, every single one of us, we want to be successful. Every single one of us, we want to be successful in our lives. Every single one of us, we want to have successful marriages. Whether we're married or not, if we desire to be married, when we step into marriage, we want to have a successful marriage. We want to have a successful family. Every single one of us want to have a successful career. And we want to have a successful job. We want to be able to enjoy going to work. Every single one of us, I know this about us, that we want to be successful in life. And so Moses is giving us a key here to being able to know that the end result is going to be success in our lives if we will itemize and calculate our day. See, a CPA, an accountant comes in, a business will hire, an organization, a church will hire an accountant to come in and to kind of go through all the financial information, go through all the books, go through everything, and come to the conclusion and say, hey, business, organization, hey, church, here is what you have. And so that now that business, that organization, or that church can now make a very wise choice as to where they allocate their resources. And that's what an accountant does. An accountant starts to itemize and starts to calculate and starts to put everything together, puts everything on the table, looks at all the books and says, all right, here's what you have. Here's what you have, business. I'm going to turn it over to you. And now the business, the owner, the CEO, the board, the people get together, the owner of that business, that organization, they get together and they say, all right, here's what we have. So now let's allocate our resources or let's allocate our finances to these different areas. What if that just as an accountant meticulously organizes the financial information, what if you and I meticulously organize our day to such an extent that we know we will make wise choices because, like Moses is praying here, we take a step back and we say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I only live once. I don't want to waste it. I only live once. I don't want to do something stupid. I only live once. I don't want to do something dumb I'm going to break my back, I'm going to ride a bike down a mountain. Never done it before, but hey, YOLO, let's just do it. Let's just try it out. Let's just see what happens. There are some things that you could just see what happens, and there's not too much of a consequence. But there are other things that we could see what happens, and there is a huge consequence, isn't there? There are some things like, yeah, maybe food, like, we could eat things and it's like there's not that big of a consequence. But at the same time, if we just say, hey, you know what, I'm going to eat whatever I want, whenever I want, I mean, it affects our body. And it affects our body in a way where, stuff starts growing. This thing just starts getting, and I used to be able to see my legs, and I look down, and I got this thing here, and like, oh my God, I don't have legs. There are some things that, let's just see what happens, and that may work, and it's not a big deal. But then there are things in life. There are choices that we make. There are decisions that you and I make. There are things that we could do with our life that if we have the mentality of, hey, let's just see what happens, that if we have that mentality, there is a huge negative, bad consequence that we're getting ready to walk into. And so Moses said this. He said, what if we didn't just jump right into stuff? What if we didn't just take a risk for just taking a risk's sake because everybody just says, oh, take a risk. Come on. You only live once. Take a risk. Take a risk. What if, Moses is saying, not that there's anything wrong with taking risks, because we should. We should. I mean, in this life, we need to take risks, especially a life of faith. I mean, walking with God. I don't see you, God. It's a risk. And to trust that, okay, I think I hear your voice and what you're leading me to do. And all right, I'm gonna take a risk. 6 years ago, when Christine and I decided that God wanted us to plant Livewire Church, 6 years ago, that was 2009. And if you remember the economy back in 2009, if there was ever a time that you could leave your job and go to another, 2009 wasn't it. All right? But we knew what God told us to do. We knew that God impressed on our heart, and he told us that this is what I want you to do. This is the next phase of your life. This is the next step. This is your story that I'm getting ready to write. This is what I want you to do. And so that's what we did. We jumped out and we said, okay. But what we did is we didn't just say, okay, well, we're just going to kind of take a risk. But actually what we did is we kind of listened to what Moses was saying here, and we said, let's take a calculated risk. Let's really look at this thing, and let's make sure that this is what God wants us to do. We didn't just say, all right, well, yeah, we want to plant a church, and so, all right, bye-bye old church, and we're going to go do our new thing. But we actually set some things up, and we put some things in motion, and we actually prayed it through first. And we were just like, God, is this really what you want us to do? Is this really the step that you want us to take? And that's what Moses is saying. Before you say something that you might regret, before you do something that you might resent, before we do stuff with our lives, what if we itemize and calculate it each day? Now, that doesn't mean that everything is going to go according to the way that we plan it. That doesn't mean that everything is going to go according to the way that we prepare it and the way that we plan, the way that we set it up. That doesn't mean that it's going to go exactly perfect. But what it does mean is that you're not just kind of going through the motions that a lot of people are doing as they live their life. That you're just not saying, well, whatever comes, and I'll just kind of deal with it, and I'll just kind of, do something. I'll just come up with some answer. I'll just come up with some solution. What if we looked at our lives and we actually had a purpose for each and every day rather than just going through the motions? And actually, Paul, in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul, and if you know anything about Paul, you know that Paul was a Christian hater at first. I mean, he hated the church, he hated Christians, and then he just had this life-changing experience with God, where God just totally turned his world upside down. He gave his life to God and wrote most of what we have as the New Testament, what we call books, are actually letters that were written to different churches. And so Paul writes to this one church that is in the city of Ephesus, called Ephesus, and the letter is called Ephesians, and he writes this kind of, here's, a couple thousand years later, and Paul writes some things pertaining to even what Moses was saying back then, as far as God teach us to number each of our days. And notice again what Moses says here, so that we may grow in wisdom, Teach us to plan out our days so that we may grow in wisdom. Now notice what Paul says in Ephesians 5:15. Paul says, so then, be very careful how you live. What should that tell us already? There's a careless way we could live. I mean, why would Paul have to say, be careful how you live, if there wasn't a careless way? And in other words, kind of that, again, that YOLO mindset of, well, there's that careful side, and then there's the careless side. There's the careful side, and then there's just the carefree side. Worry-free, hey, you know what, I don't care, I'm just going to do whatever. And then there's the side that, hey, I do care. You know what, I don't want to break my legs. I don't want to break my neck. I don't want to end my life prematurely. I want to live my life. So Paul writes, he says, so then be careful how you live. Don't live like foolish people, but like wise people. Don't live like foolish people, but like wise people. See, there are people, again, that they just don't even take any consideration. They don't take any thought at all. They're not concerned at all. They just make choices on a whim. They just make choices based on how they feel. They just make choices based on, hey, if this is how everybody else is treating me, well, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do right back. There are some people, again, that are just going through the motions. They're just kind of floating through life, and they don't even realize it. And then there are some people, like Paul is writing here, and he said, like he's saying, they're wise. And they're saying, you know what, I've calculated my life. You know what, I'm calculating each day, and I'm looking at each day, and I want to make sure that I'm making the most of each day. I want to make sure that I'm living it to the fullest. I'm living each day to the fullest, and I'm living each day with wisdom, because really, again, that's the two mindsets. That's the two ideas. That's the two schools of thought as it relates to YOLO. I remember when we were kids, we lived in New York at this time, and my brother Tony and I, Tony's a year older than I am, and although at this point, age didn't really work for him. He should have been a little bit more wiser than I was, but in this story, he wasn't really too much more wise than I was. But we were playing tag, right? Everybody's played tag before, and you don't want to be it. You know, you're doing anything and everything not to be it. And we lived in this apartment complex at this time, real high buildings, and there were these stairs that entered into, with a door that entered into the building. And they were pretty high up. And I'm not just saying that for a kid that they were high up. They were high up. These stairs were high up, going up into the building. Well, we're playing tag. All the kids are running around everywhere. And the person that is the tagger is on us, is on me and Tony. And we're running, man. We're running for our lives. I mean, isn't it funny how we're just, I mean, it's a game, right? And we're just like, we're going to die. Oh, my God. I don't want to get tagged. You know, so we're running for our lives. We're trying to get away. Well, we make the foolish choice of running up these stairs. Because now at the end of these stairs, there is no way to go but down. Because the door up there is locked. It's not working. There is nowhere to go but down. So like I said, Tony's a year older than I am, but he wasn't really operating in wisdom at this point. And he's just like, dude, man, I am not getting tagged. He hurdles that railing and he jumps down. I'm like, what? I'm like, just tag me. I ain't going over. Just tag me. I'll be it. I am not going over. I am not taking this uncalculated risk. I have calculated this thing, and I know if I am to go over, if I go over this railing, I know something is going to break, and it's going to be on me. Fortunately, thankfully, he didn't break any bones in his body. God was, watching out for him. It was that scripture that you can throw yourself down and God will protect you from the rocks. Protected him that day because actually he walked away with a sprain. But the crazy thing is that he jumps down, I get tagged, and I'm looking to see like he's okay. And all I see him doing is getting up and he's hobbling away. And he just hobbles back home. And obviously, you're thinking the worst, like, oh my God, my brother just broke his leg, I mean, you're just thinking the worst. But he took a risk. He just said, man, I haven't thought this thing through. It ain't much time to think through because I don't want to get tagged. I'm going over. Woohoo! and he goes over, he's gone. And it's kind of like people, the way that they're living their life. And friends, please listen to me this morning, because you might be here this morning and maybe that's you. And it doesn't have to be that way for your life. Maybe you're not really taking the time to think things through as it relates to how you treat your wife or how you treat your husband or how you raise your kids or what you introduce into your body or who and what you allow to influence your lives. That maybe you're not really thinking about it and you're just kind of going through the motions and hey, whatever influences me, hey, you only live once. Because the reality is this, friends, is that there is no in between. We're either living a life of wisdom or we're living a life of foolishness. And that's really, you only live once. Yeah, there's a good side of it. There's a harmless side to the idea that you only live once, but there's also a very harmful side. There's a very powerful side to you only live once, but there's also a very painful side to you only live once. And the two sides are clearly this, is that there is no in between. You're either walking with wisdom or you're either walking in foolishness. And Solomon, the wisest man that walked the face of this earth, actually God asked him, hey, Solomon, I'm going to give you whatever you want. What do you want? And Solomon could ask for riches, but he said, I want wisdom. God, I'm the king of Israel, and I want to rule well. I want to lead well. And so God just honored him. He gave him wisdom, and then he gave him riches on top of that. And Solomon, over and over, we're just going to look at a few very briefly, but Solomon over and over talks about the contrast between wisdom and foolishness. Listen to this. Proverbs 14:16. A wise person is cautious and turns away from evil, but a fool is careless and overconfident. Notice the difference. Again, going back to what Paul said, be careful how you live. Because there's a careless way to live. There's a way of foolishness that you can live. Proverbs 21:20, costly treasure and wealth are in the home of a wise person, but a fool just devours them. See, a fool just, they don't know what they don't calculate and itemize. They just say, oh, look at all this wealth. Oh, look at all these material things. Look at all I have. And they just squander it. They just spend it all up. And you know people like that. You know family members who have done that, where maybe they came into an inheritance or maybe they just landed this great job, this great career. And they should be doing well financially. And all they talk about is how much they don't have, they don't have money to pay for their bills. And you're like, what do you mean? Because they've just squandered their riches or their finances. They've been foolish with it. Proverbs 28:26, whoever trusts his own heart is a fool. Whoever walks in wisdom will survive. Whoever trusts his own heart is a fool, but if you rely on wisdom, walking in wisdom, you will survive. Proverbs 10:14, those who are wise store up knowledge, but the mouth of a stubborn fool invites ruin. The wise person, man, they are absorbing. They're just learning. They want the knowledge. They want the experience. They want to know, what is it that's going to make my marriage better? What is it that's going to make my family thrive and not just survive, but that we are going to thrive? How am I going to succeed and be prosperous in my career and with my business? How is that going to happen? That a wise person says, hey, knowledge, man, I'm going to learn from people. I'm going to learn from people, not just what they know so that I could increase in what I know and I could be more successful, but I'm also going to learn from others' mistakes. So often we don't learn from other people's mistakes, and so often we don't learn from our own mistakes. And we're doing the same foolish thing over and over and over, and we don't look and say, hey, this is what got me in this mess. I don't need to go down that route again. I don't need to do that same thing again. Proverbs 14:8, the wisdom of a sensible person guides his way of life, but the stupidity of fools misleads him or misleads them. The wisdom of a sensible person guides the way of his life, but the stupidity of fools misleads them. The one guides, the other misleads. The one leads, the other misleads. It takes you off course. It takes you off track. Takes you off point of what I should be doing, of where I should be going with my life because of being foolish. So again, returning back to that question of what idea of YOLO do you lean toward? Because you only live once. You and I, we only have this one life. And so there again, Paul says, so then be careful how you live, because there is a careless way that you can live. There is a careless way that every single one of us can live. So what if we numbered our days? What if we calculated and we itemized and we looked at our day? We meticulously organized our day to ensure that we would make wise choices. And that, friends, is what God has for every single one of us. So Paul continues on. He says, don't live like foolish people, but like wise people. Because the foolish person is going to end his life prematurely. But the wise person is going to live a long and full and prosperous and successful life. He goes on, he says, make the most of your opportunities, because these are evil days. Again, going back to carpe diem, seize the day, seize the opportunity. Seize that day, make the most. And actually, the word make the most here, it actually means to buy up. You know, it's kind of like when a hurricane hits, especially here in Florida. I mean, everybody's going to the grocery stores, going to the shopping centers, the retail stores, and buying everything up, buying generators up, buying all kinds of stuff up because, hey, hurricane's coming. I want to make sure that I'm ready if the power goes out. I want to make sure I have enough water. And that's what Paul's writing here. He's saying, buy up every single opportunity. Every single opportunity that you have to live the full and fulfilled life that you want and that God wants for you. Buy up every single opportunity. Don't be foolish with it. Don't just say, well, what happens, happens. Well, you know what? I mean, you only live once. Might as well just kind of do whatever I want. But Paul says, buy up that time. It actually, another word, another definition for it is to ransom or to rescue from loss. I mean, isn't it amazing how easy it is to waste time, to waste our time? I mean, have you ever just been there one day and you're just like, what? It's already noon? What? It's already 4 o'clock? The day's almost done? And time just goes by. And if we don't allot the time, if we don't take ownership of our time, if we don't calculate and itemize our time, if we don't meticulously organize it, our time just gets wasted on things that really don't matter. And sometimes even on people that don't really matter. That our time just gets eaten up. So the question that I want to close with is this. What if my days were numbered? I mean, the reality is your days and my days, they are numbered. Oh, every single one of us are going to die at some point. I mean, I know that's a revelation for some of you, but you're going to die, and I'm going to die too. I mean, our lives are going to come to an end. It's going to come to a close. I mean, that's a reality. But what if our days were numbered from the standpoint of where we took ownership of our lives, and we didn't let life just drag us everywhere that it wants to drag us, take us everywhere that it wants to take us? What if life wasn't dictating to us what kind of life that we were going to have? But what if we took control of our lives? And more specifically, what if we allowed our Heavenly Father, the one who created us, the one who created life, what if we allowed Him to be the primary influence in our lives and allowed Him to orchestrate our lives, allowed Him to give us the wisdom that we need, allow Him to help us calculate and itemize our lives so that we can ensure, even if everything gets all messed up, even if it doesn't go perfect, we can make sure that we're walking in wisdom, and that even though everything goes bad, we're going to come out smelling like roses. We're going to come out on the other side of that thing doing well, being successful, simply because we're walking in the wisdom that God gives us through His Word. And I encourage you this morning, because the first step of actually numbering our days is surrendering our lives to the Creator. Just saying, God, you know life better than I do. Nobody knows life like you do. You created it. is to surrender our life to Him. And then to allow Him to be the primary influence. And that means cracking open the Bible. You know, that book that's kind of collecting dust on that shelf on the table at home? Man, open that thing up, or open that app up on your smartphone, on your tablet. Open that thing up, because God has life for you and for me. He's got wisdom for us to live by that's going to make marriage, even through the tough times, going to make it work so much better than any way that we could ever make it work. Make our family work, make our career, make our studies, academics, all of those things work a whole lot better than any way that we can, simply because we say, God, you know better than I do. I need your help in this thing. I need you to give me wisdom. I need you, God, like Moses. What if that was our prayer this morning? God, teach us to number, to itemize, to calculate each and every day, so that we're growing in wisdom and that we're not just throwing our lives away. God, I thank you for your word this morning. I thank you for this message that you have shared with every single one of us. And I know, God, that every one of us want to be successful, and every single one of us want to have a full and fulfilled life, that we want to be fulfilled, and we want to enjoy life, and we want to live it to the fullest. And so, God, our prayer is just simply, would you teach us? Would you teach us to number our days? Would you teach us, God, to itemize and calculate our days, so that we would grow in wisdom, and so that we would apply wisdom to every single area of our life? God, we thank you for it, and we give you the praise, the glory, and the honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Can we give Jesus praise this morning?